It wasn't that long ago when £100 million would get you the best of the best, the world's elite, in their prime. Now, if you have one good season, bang in a few goals here and there and have a half-decent potential, you get valued at 100 million plus. And the epitome of this ridiculous inflation in player pricing is the Premier League. Widely regarded as the best league in the world and the most entertaining league in the world, Premier League is also the most profitable by a margin. It is home to some of the biggest clubs and the biggest players in the world. It is, statistically speaking, the most competitive league in the world. Any small team can go toe-to-toe with any big team on any given day. And that is why the Premier League is club football's most valuable product. And this is exactly where the problem lies. Teams get relegated to the EFL Championship and earn parachute payments of around £100 million to allow them to stay financially healthy and help them as a financial safety net. This is more money than the La Liga champions Barcelona got. This shows you the vast gap between the Premier League and its closest competitors. And this gap has, let's say, entitled the smaller fish further down the food chain to play hardball when it comes to selling their players. One good season in the Premier League, that's all it takes. It entitles your team to demand ridiculous fees for you. Dean Huijsen was one of Europe's most promising centre-back prospects. He came up through Juventus and played a season at Roma before joining Bournemouth for around £12.8 million. A season later, he moves to Real Madrid for £50 million. Elia Zabarny joined from Dinamo Kyiv for £24 million in late 2023. He had two very good seasons at Bournemouth before earning a huge move to PSG, the Champions League winners at the time, for £57 million. Alexander Isak, Newcastle's talisman, went to Liverpool for a British transfer record at the time, £125 million. Matheus Cunha was playing in the Champions League before joining Wolves in 2023, balling out for a couple of seasons, and then earning a big money move to Man United for around 60. Brian Mbeumo, one of the Premier League's most lethal finishers, joined United for around 70 million that same summer. Antoine Semenyo was outperforming at Bournemouth before Man City came calling. More recently, Anthony Gordon joined Barcelona for 80 million. These are all top players, very high quality. But what interests me is not a single player on this list was sold for a loss. The biggest transfer of the summer so far, Elliot Anderson, joined Man City for what is reported to be 116 million, but Nottingham Forest say it's 130 million, so, we don't know which one, but regardless, it's still 100 million plus. All of these teams turned huge profits on selling these players, charging what we know now as the Premier League premium. Loosely translated, this means that if you show that you can perform the high scrutiny, high intensity pressure cooker that is the Premier League, then you can probably do it just about anywhere. Nowadays, for the bigger Premier League teams, a question that is as important as anything else is this guy Premier League proven? In my day, we used to ask if he can do it on a cold night in Stoke, though.
How do the British people say you have to show it in a windy night in Stoke?
But these were conversations that were held because the Premier League had a reputation for always being physical and intense. So it makes sense to a certain degree that prem-proven players have a certain demand on the market. They demand more wages and overall would require a high-level investment. But the question is, are we now entering an era where the smaller teams have a bargaining chip that the big teams just don't have on the transfer market? Spurs are moving very actively on the market and they're building an exciting project. They've made some shrewd signings like Andy Robertson and Marco Senesi on free transfers, two Premier League proven players that don't really raise the ceiling much but do raise the floor definitely. They are quality players. They then signed Jan-Paul van Hecke from Brighton, again Premier League proven, really technical center back, a player that provides a different profile to what Spurs have had for the last few years. And then come the big money signings. Nearly 200 million spent on two midfielders, Sandro Tonali and Mateus Fernandes. Tonali has been around for a while and has been of interest to Man City, Man United, but his price tag of 100 million deterred the other teams, and Spurs offered him huge wages, so he chose to make that move. He's a Champions League pedigree player, Italian international, smack dab in his prime, so it makes sense. A Premier League proven player was sold for a Premier League premium. And then the big one, Elliot Anderson. He joined Man City for £130 million according to Nottingham Forest and 116 according to City. Either way, 100 million plus. His sale has completely inflated the transfer market, making the selling clubs demand ridiculous fees for their players. So the Premier League tax is a real thing. We've made that clear. But is it justified? Yes and no. So you're getting league-proven high-quality players that have shown that they can cope with the intensity and the demands of the league. They won't need an adaptation period. They're ready to go from day one. So in that sense, it could make sense for clubs to charge higher fees for these players. But on the other hand, the market has become so ridiculously inflated that buying these players for reasonable amounts has become near impossible. Man United are an interesting case study for this because after missing out on 2 of their top transfer targets this summer, they've turned their heads to the likes of Alex Scott and an interesting one in Andre Santos, 80 million and 50 million. 2 young midfielders who are just coming up in their careers, and they would require an investment of 130 million pounds. When you have ambitions of rebuilding multiple areas of your squad, these numbers are just not feasible, even for Man United. So what should these big teams do now that the smaller teams have an advantage in the market? The solution seems very obvious, but it's also riskier. The one advantage the smaller guys like Brighton, Brentford, and Crystal Palace have over the big teams is that they scout promising talents before their name is even known. Before the big fish start circling, they become the logical next step for up-and-coming talents. Chelsea weirdly have been doing this for about 4 years now. There's players in their first team that I've never even heard of. They buy these players, loan them out to Strasbourg for development purposes, and then they either integrate them into the first team at Chelsea or they sell them on for profit. This is, in a way, a sustainable model. So should the other big teams follow this model? Should they recruit more directly from the source, so to say, rather than be final destination for these players? Because if they invest more into these guys, develop them in their youth teams, or loan them out to another European side, you either have a young player ready to go in your team, or you have an asset that you can flip on for profit and go again. It doesn't sound very sentimental, of course, and football is a sentimental game, but it's becoming necessary. Of course, you're going to have to spend big money on some big names here and there, but shopping outside of the Premier League seems to be an overlooked weapon that the big teams need to do more of. There's so many quality players abroad that don't cost half as much as their Premier League counterparts do. Of course, this is all a fan's perspective at the end of the day. I am not executive, so I don't really know what I'm doing, but the executives do know what they're doing. They probably have a solution in mind, but this is just an opinion that I have on the transfer market and how ridiculous it's becoming to sign players. And the Premier League tax is doing irreversible damage to the transfer market. And the question now is, do these clubs just accept that the market is going to keep getting inflated, like this is just a new reality, or do they start looking for a solution abroad?